Good. So we started recording. All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the technical meeting organized by the AACEI Australian section. This is actually our second last technical meeting. If I'm not wrong, there will be another one in November, and then we'll see you again in 2023. Today we have an interesting presentation. Paul is going to give to us the analysis on the new versions in Primavera P6. So quickly, I'm going to go through what we have for tonight. So I'm going to explain quickly the meeting procedures and quickly introduction about the AACE, both international and the AACE in the Australian section. We're going to go to the webinar then some questions and networking if everyone is happy to. So in terms of meeting procedures, everyone will be muted during the presentation. If you would like to ask any question or make any comment, I think we have the Q&A feature tonight, so try that. Otherwise, just drop the question into the chat box. And we'll do the effort to answer as many questions throughout the webinar, actually. The webinar will be available later on. We're going to upload the presentation in YouTube in our channel, so make sure you follow the channel as well. We'll post the audio in Spotify in our podcast. And if you guys need any certificate, please just send us an email, and I'll make sure you get the certificate of attendance. And then, yeah, make sure you visit our website. We always have new stuff there. About us, about the AACE. The AACE stands for the Association for the Advancement of Cost Engineering. We serve the total cost management community since 1956, and we are committed to the constructive exchange of ideas between members, development of technical guidance and quality education, and recognition of subject matter expert through all the range of certifications that AACE has. And we are spread out all over Australia. We have a presentation in Queensland, in Western Australia, in Victoria. Well, those are the main 3 states. And you can see there as well all the members of the committee. By the way, if you are interested in helping and volunteering our team, if you are willing to spend around 10 or 5 hours per month in our chapter, please reach out. I know we do have some positions available to help in Australia. So now we're going to welcome Paul. He's going to present on what's new in Oracle Primavera P6 version 19, 20, and 21 PPM Professional. So thanks, Paul, for joining us. Can you please share your screen now?
Okay, so hopefully you see my screen now. So I've written on the last 3 updates of Primavera P6, 19, 20, 21, a short paper which is available through my websites. And this presentation just combines all of those papers. Before version 19, 8, 15, 16, 17, there weren't really an 18 substantial number of enhancements, but the Oracle Primavera have made a lot of enhancements in 19, 20, and 21. So what I'm going to do is just go through these enhancements and explain the basics of what they do. So as I said, they've made a number of enhancements. I also try and suggest practical uses for these enhancements, whereas the Oracle paper just tells you what they do, but I try to take it a step further. One of the things you need to understand is the Oracle Primavera enhancement philosophy. And again, this doesn't seem to be documented anywhere, but basically it's my observation, if they add new features that affect the way the software schedules, then you need to turn it on. So if you've got a schedule created in version 8, 15, 16, 17, and you open it up in 21, it's going to calculate the same unless you turn on the enhancements. But obviously when you turn on the enhancements, it might calculate differently. So let's list the version 19 enhancements. They've got dissolve activities with lag and using retain lag. They've increased the project code list. They've got user-defined field tabs. They've got a data date default change for applied actuals. There is allow or restrict access to users to multiple resource nodes rather than just one resource node. They've got activity detailed task tab, and I'll talk about that. So these are the main updates in versions 19. There are a lot of other ones. I just focus on the ones that affect the user and the software rather than the other updates which are, you know, restrict user access and security and things like that. I tend not to get too involved in. So dissolving activities with retain lag. So this was new to version 19. And what it does is if you go to the user preferences calculations, you've got to tick this to turn on retain lag. And the way it works is that if you have an activity here, and you've got lag here and lag there, what happens if you dissolve it in version 19 without retain lag, what happens is you lose the lag values. But if you turn on retain lag and you dissolve it, it adds up the predecessor and successor retain lag and puts it in here. So what this has done is when I've dissolved activity 2, here it's just got rid of the lag, whereas here it's added the predecessor and successor lag together. I don't use dissolving activities very often. I don't have many activities with leads and lags. I mean, it might be useful to some people. I don't think it's something that I would really call an essential upgrade, but it's there. Project maximum code maximum length increase. It increased the code length to 60 characters. Originally, P6 had 20. It then went to 40 because SAP in the old days, the project length was 38, and you couldn't import the full project code. I'm not too sure whether SAP has now increased it from 38, but now you can have a project code of 60 characters, and this has obviously been done for ERP systems. I don't like a project code of 60 characters because it means that your WBS is going to be at least 62 characters, which is very long. And so again, it's one of those functions that I'm not too sure of the great benefit to the average user, but obviously if you're importing from an ERP system and you're on an ERP system and you want to maintain a very long project ID, it's going to be very useful. But as I say, the downside is WBS code gets very long. Now, in version 19, they've got a user-defined field tab. So what this means is that in the projects window, the WBS window, activities window, resource, assignments, expenses, issues, work products, risks, and documents, you now have a tab for user-definable fields. So you can see user-definable fields in the details window, not just in columns. And this is really useful. So what happens now is you have a user-defined field tab, and you can decide what user-definable fields you want to see in that tab here. So this picture is showing the user-definable field here, and obviously customized user-definable fields lets you select which fields you see. So this is a really useful one. You've got an option to hide empty rows. So if you hide empty rows, so if you've got a row that's empty, then you won't see it here. So this is something I think is a great enhancement. Of course, as I said, you've got it in a large number of windows. Next one is the data date default for apply actuals. Well, I don't like to apply actuals anyway, because it does what it does is makes your sets your start and finish to plan date. So I'd never use apply actuals in a pink fit. But what this allows you to do is when you apply actuals is to have different data dates for different projects. When you're scheduling, it's useful to have a different data date for different projects. Again, P6 used to change them all to the same one, but now you can have a different data date for different projects. Next thing is allow or restrict access to resources from multiple parent codes. So in the old days, when you create a user, you say the user can have access to one resource node or all resources. Whereas what this is done now is allow when you create a user, you can give the user access to up to now 5 resource nodes, which is you can either go all resources. In the old days, you could just have one node or one resource, whereas now you can have up to 5 rows. And that, again, I think is very useful. It allows you to give a user access to different parts of the database. or the resource nodes. So that I think is a really worthwhile one. Activity details task tab. So what happens is tasks are a new function in version 19, and this allows users to view tasks created in Primavera Cloud. So some people might say, what the hell is Primavera Cloud? So Primavera Cloud is the latest of the Primavera offering, which is a only web-based scheduling tool. It's very similar to Primavera EPPM Web. It's been based on that, but they have added new functions, and tasks are one of them. So an activity can be broken down into tasks. So in Primavera Cloud, an activity can be broken down into tasks which do not drive dates but allow further granulation into an activity in more detailed work. They're different to steps, and they can have a relationship between them that's called a handoff. All right, and so in version 20, you can actually view the tasks that are created in Primavera Cloud. You can't change them, but you can view them if you import a schedule from Cloud. So you have to export it from Cloud and import it into P6, and then you can view the task, but you can't edit them. So that covers version 19. My comments on Primavera Cloud is there are not many users that are using it. And it's sad that you can't open a schedule from Primavera Cloud with P6 PPM. So we go on to version 20. There's a new login screen. The relationship comments, role rate can change over time. There's multiple project scheduling date selection. There is multiple project scheduling option selection. There's lean tasks. Different projects may have different financial periods, assignment codes, a histogram bar exact values. And there are lots of little enhancements. They did quite a bit of work in version 20, so I'll just rattle through the little enhancements quickly. So first of all, there's a new login screen. It's the same data, it's just a new one. It's not of great importance. Relationship comments. This is really valuable. So now you can put a comment on a relationship. So when you add a relationship, you can say why you've added it, or if you change the lead or lag, you can say why you've done that. So that's really useful. You see it in the relationships, you can see it in the predecessor, you see it in the successor. So relationship comments are really useful, whereas before you would have to put a comment in why the relationship has been changed. You'd have to put it in the predecessor or successor. So that's really useful. So you need to actually you can also see them. You can see them in columns as well if you want to in certain areas. It's as I say, it's really useful for recording changes to relationships. Also, the comments column is available in the relationships report, but you have to add it. So if you open up the relationship report, you can add the comments as well. Next thing is role rate changes over time. Resources has always been able to vary the rate over time, but roles would not. And this was one of the drivers where people would use resources and not roles, because there's less functionality in roles than resources. So what you can do now is you can change the role rate over time, which is quite useful. And obviously, if you when an activity spans 2 periods, then P6 calculates a proportional resource rate based on the activity duration in each period. So it doesn't in version 20 actually calculate the cash flow properly. So what it does is if you have an activity where the role rate changes over time, what it does is it uses an average across the whole length of the activity, which is not really what I would like to see. Okay, so if I go back here, I've got the activity on the 1st of January being 110, 1st of January 20, on 1st of January 21 it went to 120, 1st of January 22 it went to 140. So if I go to this next picture, you can see that here it's 110 and here it's 120. So P6 has got an average rate over the whole of the project, all right, or whole of the activity. So the cash flow here is high and the cash flow there is low. So again, in version 20, the cash flow, like this is exactly the way the resources, if the resource changes over time, calculates. And obviously you must use the recalculate cost assignment function when you schedule, if the activity moves into a different time zone, if you want the cost recalculated. And obviously here, where I got 3 days in the old time period and I got 7 in the new, then you can see that it's gone up a little bit. This is when I got 4 in the old time period and 6 in the new. You can see how the rate changes. So I've demonstrated how the roll rate changes over time. And as I say, this is exactly the same as the way resources calculate, but this was fixed in version, I got version 22, in actual fact, it's version 21. I need to fix that. So oh, damn, I've messed up. I've got rid of the slideshow. Let me just change this to version 21. My apologies there. I like to fix it while I can. So next thing here is data selection in multiple project scheduling. So when you schedule multiple projects, in the previous version, you could have different data dates for apply actuals in 19. In version 20, you can actually allow projects to use their own data date or apply a specific data date to all projects, which is how earlier versions work. So now if you've got multiple projects, you can have, and you're scheduling multiple projects, they can all use their own data date. I personally think that's bad practice. If I've got multiple projects that I'm opening together, particularly if they're related, I like them to have all the same data date. I just think it's good practice. But obviously, there'll be people who disagree with me and they would like projects to use their own data date when you schedule multiple projects together. Also, there are multiple project scheduling options. So in version 19 and earlier, when multiple projects were scheduled and they had different scheduling options, which could happen when you change them from the default project or when you imported a project, what happened is you had a set default project. So this project here, the scheduling options from this project were used to schedule both projects, and the scheduling options for this project were changed to the same as that one permanently. I don't like this. I don't like it at all, because you can import this project and then you schedule it with another one and it changes the scheduling options of both projects. And you need to be very careful. If you're scheduling the multiple projects together, you need to make sure that all your projects have the same scheduling options. So scheduling options, default project, control which options are used for all projects that you're scheduling together, and they're all changed to the default project. What happened in version 20? Well, in version 20, there's a drop-down box in the schedule options here, and you can decide which the default project is here. And what it does is it uses whichever project here you select as the default project. And therefore, the scheduling options for the other projects were changed. But what also happened is also you can also select the default project in the leveling options as well as scheduling options. So you can set the default project in scheduling options or leveling options. Well, it says use scheduling options from, but the interesting thing is by doing this, I found that the default project, if you selected a different default project in the scheduling options to the set default project form, then the scheduling options took preference over the set default project form. So what happens is you can set a default project in the default project form, you can select a different default project in the scheduling options, and this took preference over the default project. To me, Oracle should have got rid of the default project, and they forgot to do it, and now they have two scheduling options that are in conflict. So basically, the default project in set default project is ignored and not changed when the default project is changed in the scheduling options. Use scheduling options form. So this, I think, is a scrappy piece of programming, and I really think that Oracle have not done a good job here. So you have two places to set the default project, but my advice is don't use the default project form anymore. Use the scheduling options form and forget about the default project because it doesn't work anymore. So that covers that. Lean tasks, if you have lean tasks, you can import them with an XML file. So Primavera Cloud allows activities broken down into tasks, and as I say, you can import them. There is when you bring in these lean tasks, You can make them private. There's a few things here that I'm not going to go into detail here. So now in version 20, you can have multiple financial periods. In earlier versions, you could only have all the financial periods for all projects, either being weekly or monthly or yearly or whatever, weekly, monthly or fortnightly. In version 20, you can have multiple financial periods, and then you can select which financial period each project uses. And so you'll find that in the project window general tab, there's a new tab here where you select which project window you use. So this does allow you to have multiple financial periods. Unfortunately, this didn't work in my version. I loaded up version 20.12.03374. I presume it would have got fixed in later versions, okay? But that's the concept of it, and if you load your patches as you should do, it might work. Assignment codes. This is a really an interesting function. So what happens is when you assign a resource to an activity, you can give an assignment code. Okay, give it an assignment code. And I did a bit of inquiry about why this was developed. This was developed so again, it could be you could input the assignment codes from ERP systems. Right, that's why, so you don't lose a data when you import from an ERP system. If you're not importing from an ERP system, it has limited value, in my opinion. It could be used for assigning a priority to resource assignments, or if there's one generic resource like a plumber, you might be able to use this for the subcontractor that the plumber is coming from. But my understanding is that this was again brought in for ERP systems. So obviously people are using SAP or something like that have been getting into the ears of the developers and getting this stuff brought in so that they can have better alignment with their ERP systems. And assignment codes are created in the same way as other codes like resource codes and activity codes. You just go to enterprise assignment codes and create them like this. Assignment codes can be assigned when you assign resources. You can see them in so they're displayed when in the resource assignments. You can see them in a number of different places in the software. So once you've assigned them, you can see them all over the place. Where you go and see resources, you can see them in resource views and anywhere in the software. Another one, again, assignment codes. If you're using an ERP system, then obviously they're valuable. To the general user, I don't think it's not a priority for me. Histogram bar extracts. This allows you now, this new box here, to show you the exact value above the histogram. I think that's a great functionality, especially when you found that the line here didn't line up with the value on the histogram bar. So that's great enhancement. Other enhancements, a lot of little ones. The resource assignment window allows grouping and filtering by codes and UDS, which is useful. You've got fill down available in the Windows resource usage spreadsheet, so you can fill down activities there. If there's a network failure, then P6 is meant to continue working. Again, this is when you're in the EPM cloud, all right, and it's been configured to allow you to keep working, but I don't think this is in the PPM. You can prevent risk categories being imported into a PPM database. So when you export a XCR, you've got a new box to say you don't want to import them. Risk categories are not imported or exported into an ePPM database anyway. It's now got support for Arabic. You can reset locked users. So in the ePPM version, if users are locked out of P6 or visualizer, you can reset them easily. Whereas before you have to wait for 15 minutes or so. Uploading harmful files, you can prevent that here. I need to actually, what happens is you can have a list of site exception lists here, all right? And then when you go to the URLs in the notebook topic, if you put these URLs in notebook topics, you can click on them. But if this URL is not not in the site exception list, you can't click on it and launch that URL. So this stops people launching URLs to, and if you try and launch a URL that isn't up here, it gives you an error message. There are role codes, so you can assign codes to roles. So you can create a code for a role and assign it to a role. Again, it's not a great use to me. I don't think it's not one that I would think is a particularly important one, but it's there and you can use it. And that basically covers the version 20. So there's a lot of stuff in version 20. And not a lot of it I would think is really of great importance, but they're all enhancements. Version 21 enhancements, assignment costs are exported. This is really hard to explain. I did a day's worth of testing to try and work out what the bloody hell's going on here. But anyway, I can go through that and see what I found. Users may see and set activity start and finish times in the date picker box. This is really useful, and I'll talk about that. You can select the financial period when you import an XML file. So in version 20, you could have different financial periods, but when you imported it in version 20, now you can select which one you want to use. So you can actually change the financial period on import. You can maintain relationships with external projects when importing from a Primavera XML file. I'll have to demonstrate that. It doesn't make a lot of sense by reading the description. ImpDAR format is a format in the US that can now be imported. Resource and role cost spreads consider the rate change over time. What this means is now cash flows are done properly. There's an activity critical path toolbar, which in actual fact I ought to fire up P6 to demonstrate it. I should have fired this up before. I'll fire this up in the background now while I finish the presentation. You've also got milestone reduced relationship types. I can't quite understand why they've done this, all right, but basically there are less relationship types now with onto milestones, okay, and I'll explain how that works when we get to it. So let's talk about activity assignment costs are exported. So what happened in P6 version 21 and earlier? If you had an XER file and you exported the file, all right, to another database and you import it, calculated exactly the same cost. But what happens when you export an XML file and it got into another database? The cost might be wrong, and I want to explain why. So what happens here is that I'm just firing up my my P6 here. So what happens now is that they say when you export to an XML file, the price per unit data assignments is included in the export file. And that doesn't make sense to me, okay? And this, in my opinion, is misleading. And there's several pages, but in summary, with version 20, when a resource has been assigned to an activity and the rate in the resource window was then changed, so you have a resource rate of, say, $20 when you assign the resource and you change it to 40. Then on export and import into another database, the assignment was recalculated based on the resource rate from the source data, and the project showed a different cost in the target database. So what I'm saying here is when you exported an XML from one database to another, you may get different costs in the target database if you've changed the resource rate. So that's what happened in version 20. In version 20, I found that when you exported an XML file and imported it into another database, it recalculated the resource cost based on the rate in the target database if it had it. And that doesn't mean the same. That doesn't seem to make sense to me, okay? So I've done a lot of testing and a lot of playing around. And basically what I'm suggesting to you is that if you are exchanging data with a customer and you're changing the role rate from the resource rate from one project to another, I would export your files as XER files and not XML. That's my recommendation. I went into quite a lot of detail And this is basically what I'm saying. Keep all your resource rates the same in the target database, the source database, or export and import in with an XML. If you export and import an XML, import and export with an XER. If you import and export with an XER, the cost won't change as long as you don't recalculate assignment costs. Okay, so this is a real nightmare in my opinion. So if you do not want the risk of assignment costs changing on import, then use an XER file. But I recommend if you're using XML, and you have to with an EPPM database, you've got to make sure that you don't make the resource rate in the resource table different to that when you assign it to the task. And this is just a nightmare. So the next thing here, well, basically, I don't think they've solved the problem. The next thing here is users may see and set activity start and finish times in the date picker box. I think this is a good enhancement. So what happens in version 20, if you said, I don't want to see the time in the date field, you didn't see the time here, okay? You didn't see the time when you set a start, actual start, or finish, or a project start, or suspend and resume. And without showing the time, then P6 would often choose the wrong time. So if you set a suspend date, it would always set the time as the morning. And if you set a resume date, it would always set it in the evening, which doesn't make sense. And often actual starts and actual finishes are set at midnight, stuff like that. So in version 20, if you just showed the date without the time, you didn't see the time here. But in version 21, if you don't show the date with the time, you actually see the time in the date picker box, which I think is a good enhancement. But my basic opinion is that you should still show the date in your date and time in columns anyway. But this is a good enhancement. Financial period calendar. So version 20 allowed you to have multiple financial periods, and version 21 allows you to select which financial period you want to use when you import the project. Next one here is maintain relationships with external projects when importing from a Primavera XML file. So basically, this is a new drop-down box when you import. And basically, if you have 3 projects here, okay, and they were linked, and then what happens is if the second project was exported, so you exported that project, all right, and then I deleted the project and therefore import it as if I was importing it into a different database. When you say do not import external dates, what it does is doesn't import external start and finish dates and doesn't import the relationships. All right. Whereas if you say keep existing or update existing before rescheduling, you'll find it brings in the missing predecessors and successors, but it doesn't set external start and external finish dates, which is quite an interesting thing. You really have to play around with this to really understand. Again, I spent a couple of hours playing around with this. But what would happen in earlier versions is that when you imported this project, it was set an external early start and external late finish. So this works differently now, version 21. So external early start, external late finishes are not set with that update. So, and it allows you to import a project and not set external dates when you have external relationships. So again, when you import a project, I always look for external start and external late finish. So that's an interesting one. Moving on, IMPAR. So IMPDAR format is a new format required by the US Department of Defense. You can only import it when you have an EPPM database, and it's grayed out when you have a PPM database. I don't think this is of great interest to us. This is a really good enhancement. As I said to you before, when you have a resource or roll rate that change over time, the cash flow was wrong. So what they've done now is they brought this in, which is linear or unit spread. So as I said to you before, if you want to have unit spread, you have to tick that box on. So the philosophy with Oracle Primavera is when you have an enhancement, it's turned off, you have to turn it on to use it, which makes sense. So if you turn this on to unit spread, then your software will calculate differently. So this changes how the cost spreads are created. Let me show you. So in earlier versions, if you had the rate change over time, it used an average rate, okay? But what happens now, this is in the earlier versions, all right? So I've got $30 an hour. So this is the linear spread, which shows the $30 an hour, which is $240 a day. So it's using the linear spread. Here you can see I've got 20 and 40, and I've got half the activity in the $20 a day, half the activity in the $40 a day, but it's taken the average of 240. If you select unit spread, now it does the cash flow properly. So both roles and resources, the unit spread does the cash flow properly when you have a resource rate change over time. And this is how I think it should have always calculated. But at last they've sorted that out. I personally don't like unit rates to change over time, but that software function is available in the software, and now it calculates properly. Okay, what are we talking about now? Next thing we're talking about now is if I want to talk about the activity critical path. So there's a new toolbar in version 21 titled Activity Critical Path, okay? And you have to turn it on to see it, all right? And it has these buttons. And what I'm going to do is, in my paper, it's got a lot of screen dumps. What I'm going to do is try and drag this across here, all right, and show you how it works. Hopefully I can get this across here onto the screen. I'm just moving my P6, trying to move my P6 across. Come on. Here it is. Okay, where are we now? So what we have here is a schedule. All right, and I'm going to hopefully make that fit the screen. Make that fit the screen. Not too sure what's happening. Remind me later. Hopefully we'll get that going. Okay, so full screen. That's a bit better. So this is the toolbar here that you have to turn on. Let me drag it. Let me drag it in. Try to drag it. Come on. It's not letting me drag it here. This is a new toolbar called the Activity Critical Path. Okay, it's called the Activity Critical Path. Now, if I take an activity here, all right, I've taken an activity here, and I can go here, and here this allows me to decide how many critical paths I want to see. All right, so I can decide whether I want to go and see here. I can say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or I can go down here and just see one activity critical path. And what this allows me to do is to see the backward critical path, but it's not letting me see it. I wonder why it's not. I need to select, try to select here. So what this allows me to see is the one backward critical path. So what it does is show me all the activities driving to that activity here. So if I click on this one here, I can select the backward critical path, try again, the backward critical path, and that shows me the backward critical path. So if I click a button, it turns that function on or off. If I have the forward critical path, it shows me all the activities afterwards. Although it's called the forward critical path, it actually has basically the chain of events afterwards. So that's the forward backward critical path, or this one shows both of them. Okay, but also if I want to increase the number of critical paths, I can say I want to have 2 critical paths, and then I can select an activity and I can see the 2 forward critical paths. You see how it's showing this one and this one, or the 2 backward critical paths. There's only 1 backward critical path, so it's not showing 2. So this is showing 2 forward critical paths, or I can show 3 forward critical paths. Okay, so this changes the count. This one here is the resource-driven critical path, and I need to actually have a project here to show you it. The resource-driven critical path. Have I got it in here? Sorry, I haven't got it in this. Sorry, I've got it in a different bloody database. Okay, so what this does is when you level a schedule, the resource-driven critical path, when you level a schedule, it gives you the resource-driven critical path. I'll actually fire up my presentation here, my paper, to show you, because I can't see it in my I'm not I can't find the schedule quickly enough to show you. So let me just get the paper, and from my paper, this is just finding the what's new in version 21. So this is my what's new in version 21 paper. Let me just bring it across here. And basically, if I go down, this is the paper. What will happen is with the backward critical path, I can find it. So what happens is, here we are. If you level a schedule so there's no relationships and you just show the backward critical path, you'll see one activity if you click on it because there's no relationships. But if you resource level, all right, and you select the backward critical path, it will show you the resource driven critical path. All right, so that's how that one works. So if you've leveled your schedule, all right, leveled your schedule, then what you need to use is the this one here, which is the resource driven critical path. So this I think is a great tool, and I you know I think it's great to be able to click on an activity and see the and see the chain of events that drives it forward or back. And also here, this button here allows you to show or hide the group and sort. Okay, so you turn it on and off, you turn that one on or off, and that sort of thing. Okay, so that's the activity-driven critical path. I think it's a great enhancement. Trying to get rid of that thing. Reduced milestone relationship types. I don't understand why they've done it. Don't understand it. But in version 20, a milestone could have 3 predecessor types and 3 successor types. But in 21, it's reduced them. Okay, it's reduced them. And so what happens now, let me just see if I can find a schedule for you in here. So in version 21, what happens is when you create a schedule here, let me go to this one here, open the project. What happens now? Sorry, I've opened the wrong project. I see what's going wrong here. When you open a project here, what will happen in version 21 is that when you have a relationship to a milestone here, you won't get a finish to start. You'll get a finish to finish. Okay, I don't like this at all. I don't think it's a proper critical path. I think it's a bad enhancement. That's my personal opinion. So if I go and split the screen, you will see if I go to this milestone here, or I go to this one here, and I go to the successors, you can see I can have a finish to finish, I can have a finish to a start to finish, but I can't have a finish to start as you would get with version 20. I don't like it. And also, if you go to the start here, now, if I go to the predecessor here, you have lost the option of having here, this is a start to start, but I can't have a finish to start from this milestone here. So when you import a project, you will find that it will be imported from version 20 with a finish to start, but if you change it, you lose it. So you can import projects, but you'll lose that relationship. I don't understand why they've done it. I really don't understand it. Okay, so what happens when you chain link in version 20, you get this. Okay, when you chain link in version 21, you get this shit. I don't think it's good. All right, but that's what's happened. So yeah, as I say, this really doesn't constitute to me a critical path program. So the links to my papers, these are my papers. You'll get them on my website if you go to primavera.com.au or eh.com.au or eastwoodharris.com.au. Yeah, so I was going to say any questions, and thank you for attending. So maybe I'll hand back to you, Frank.
Thank you very much, Paul. It's been very, very interesting. Actually, we don't have any questions so far. Is there anyone interested in unmute themselves and speak? If not, I think we can finish the webinar.
Yeah, well, if we finish the webinar, that's great. And then I can make some comments on the enhancement that I don't want recorded.
Okay, that's great then. Well, thank you everyone for your attendance. Let us know if you have any questions later on. We can always go back to you guys and respond with any query you may have. Have a good night, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks, Paul, for everything as well.
Okay, thank you. We having an open mic session now?
Yeah.